You are here for a talk, series we're having, Community Conversations, called Keeping Curious, Talking Trees. My name is David Meshulam. I am Executive Director and co-founder of a community forestry nonprofit here in Boston called Speak for the Trees, and I've been working closely with Evan over at BU Urban to create this space during our pandemic where we can continue talking to each other and finding ways to learn and co-create new opportunities for a greener and healthier and resilient Boston. Very pleased today for our conversation with three researchers and educators who work at the Arboretum. But before we begin, I wanted to just thank you for joining us and share a little bit with you about the work we do at Speak for the Trees, and then Evan will share a little bit about BU Urban. And I have a little piece of paper here. Let's see. Oh, looks like I might have to remove my background for a minute. I'm actually not at the Redwoods. I know it's deceiving. So let me remove my background and then share with you our work at Speak for the Trees and how you can get involved. So we are really, really thankful for all of you who are joining us, and especially for those of you who are able to donate to this and our programs at Speak for the Trees. Really thankful to be able to do this work in Boston. And I ask you, my request of you today is to get involved and join us in whatever way you can. That might be reaching out to a friend or neighbor and sharing with them that we exist, following us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, donating to our cause, or if you're interested in getting a tree, we're actually doing a couple of events where we're giving trees out to residents of Boston. You can find out more on our website at sfttbos.org/getatree, or you can go direct to Arbor Day, where we're doing $10 donation trees, where you get a tree mailed to you from Arbor Day, and that's at arborday.org/sfttbos. So sign up, get our newsletter, be part of our work, and join us also next week for a talk, and I'm gonna share my screen here, about gas leaks and trees. We're gonna be joined by Jess Wright, who I think is on the call right now. Hi, Jess. Who's a PhD student at Boston University, part of the Urban program, and Audrey Schulman, who's co-executive director of HEAT. And they're going to be talking about leafy trees and leaky pipes, urban infrastructure, and its effects on trees. So that's going to be May 6th. I believe that's a Wednesday at 3 p.m., same location. We'll have an Eventbrite page set up soon, so you can register for that. And we're actually going to be sponsored by Berkshire Bank for that talk. So thank you, Berkshire Bank. If you work at a company that might be interested in supporting our work, we're doing sponsorships for these series. Please reach out to me directly. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Evan.
Thank you, David, and it's great to be with you all today. My name is Evan Curis, and I'm the program manager for BU Urban. We are a training program at Boston University that connects environmental health and biogeoscience in cities. We train PhD programs to help cities solve environmental problems. This is a great opportunity for us to connect with practitioners like David and many of you, and at the Arnold Arboretum, to talk about how research and practice work together in cities to solve problems. I'll just give a brief overview of today. I'll shortly pass it off to our three speakers to introduce themselves and to tell you about their work. We'll have a Q&A moderated by me. So as our speakers are talking, if you have questions, you can type them in the chat. And also, when you do that, let me know if you'd like to ask the question yourself. Just like type your question and say, I'd like to ask this, and then I'll call on you to do that. So we can have a little bit more order. I'm also happy to synthesize questions as they come in and kind of ask them together. We'll end with a quiz bowl where our three speakers will be competing on behalf of three of you. Whoever wins the quiz bowl that lucky guest will get a t-shirt from Speak for the Trees. So I'll be asking some of you in the chat privately if you're okay being a contestant. That means that if Jenna might be playing on behalf of you, then you will win the shirt that David is holding up if Jenna wins the quiz bowl. So you'll have a chance to root for your speaker. So that should be fun. And then we'll end with just a few announcements from the Arboretum, from BU Urban, and from Speak for the Trees. And with that, I will pass it off to Ana Maria, Faye, and Jenna to get us started. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And David, you can put the presentation up.
I look okay? Is it working?
Can you put it in full screen mode?
Yeah,
Or slide presentation mode?
Oh, is it not? Hold on. Is it showing you this funny one? All right, give me a sec.
No, just
Yep.
start the presentation.
I thought I did, and it start first slide. Is it not showing you the presentation? Technical difficulties, everyone. All right, let's try it this way. Give me one sec here. I will do it this way and try it this way. Nope, it's being stubborn. Because I have it on, you know what, I'm gonna do this.
Jenna,
Technical difficulties.
Jenna, do you want to share it from your screen if you have it pulled up?
Yeah, I can pull it up real quickly. Oh, go ahead, David.
I have it set up. It's gonna work now, I think. I think. How's that?
Same.
Yeah, it's back up.
Is it full screen?
Yeah,
Well,
you're showing on the side.
yeah, it's not really showing the present. It's showing the whole program.
Yeah.
Then I don't know what to do.
Jenna, can I ask you to share? We can make you
Yeah.
a host and you can share it from yours.
Yeah, I can try sharing it.
Okay, sorry everyone. Oh, David, you have to make Jenna the host.
Got it.
Because since I'm just a co-host. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
All right, there you go, Jenna.
All right, so David, you should stop sharing.
Okay, there we go. All right, while we're waiting for Jenna to get it up, you'll notice I put in a invitation to our next meeting. It's in the chat window. You should feel free to download that and put that in your calendar for next week. So yeah, we could just talk about the weather, Evan.
Well, with that, I mean, if Jenna, Faye, or Ana Maria, if you want to start while Jenna's pulling up the slides, then at least we can start hearing who you are.
Are you almost ready, Jenna? Probably she is, but we have it in kind of organized so that the three of us are going to take turns talking just for a short time. We're each going to use some pictures to introduce ourselves, and then we're each going to tell you a little bit about what we do. But we've made it so that we've actually left lots and lots of time open for questions. So we really want to hear what you want to hear about as well, so we can have hopefully a nice conversation. And that's our goal for the day. Jenna looks very intense over there.
I'm really struggling, but I'll get it in a second.
I also have it on mine if you want me to do it too.
This is a real test of a PhD student, is how quickly can you pull up a screen share. And new skills we're all learning on Zoom here. I'm curious, for those of you on video, how many of this is, many of you have used Zoom before all this shelter in place. All right, I see a few hands, but for most of us, yeah, this is new. Hey, congrats, Jenna.
No, that was me who did it. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's much better.
All right, I'm ready then. I did option B.
All right, you can go to the
Right.
next slide, actually.
That's what you think. There we go.
Perfect. All right, so this is me. Hi, everybody. My name is Ana Maria Caballero, and I'm very happy to be a part of this conversation today. It's a little bit about myself. I am here today by way of Cuba, where my parents are from, through the early years of exile in Florida. Did a 2-year stint in Bogota, Colombia, which I don't remember much because I was only 2 years old. And then I spent 16 and a half years in Brazil. And as you might know, Rio, where I was from, is densely populated, very noisy, polluted, and with a high percentage of extreme poverty. But yet, no matter where you go, it's breathtaking natural beauty. And we even had a tree inside our house. Next. I've always wanted to be a teacher, so I got my degree in early childhood education and moderate special needs from Boston College, and promptly began my teaching career. After 25 years in the classroom, I can tell you with certainty that what children remember and learn best are field trips, hands-on science that engages, meaningful projects, and playful learning. I left teaching in the aftermath of No Child Left Behind and testing wars and ever more constricting methodologies of instruction. Next. Eventually, I landed in the education department at the Arnold Arboretum, where I work with children and adults, combining my absolute ingrained love of nature with my passion for teaching. And here I can focus on the best educational practices while promoting the mission of the Arnold Arboretum. And that's me.
Okay, thanks, Anna. So I'm also happy to be here. My name is Fay Rosine, and I'm the Director of Research Facilitation at the Arboretum. And I chose this picture here to introduce myself. It's a picture from the Arboretum, but it explains how I got to the Arboretum from when I was a child to how I got here. And so this is a picture of an oak tree, and it reminds me of my grandfather's farm from when I was little. And going out with my grandfather, and he would tell me what a tree was just from the bark or what that flower was and all the different parts about it. It really was instrumental in making me interested in both the environment as well as plants themselves. Next slide, please. And so then I went to undergrad and I got a degree in environmental science and biotech. And while I was an undergrad, I did an internship at Iowa State, and I worked on a fungus that is a biocontrol for corn. And then I went back to school, back to Iowa State for my PhD, which was in molecular, cellular, and developmental biology. And I spent a whole lot of time working on different plants, mostly crops, because I was in the horticulture department. So potato and strawberry and even trees that have legumes on them. And then I went into postdocs in the Netherlands and in Jersey and also here at Harvard before I ended up back at the Arboretum with that oak tree, coring trees so I could teach a history class all about how trees can tell you something about the environment and the history itself. So that is my introduction, and I'm going to hand it off to Jenna.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenna Rindy. I am a PhD student in the biology department at BU. I started my academic journey at Slippery Rock University in Pennsylvania, so those are the pictures on the left. I studied the effectiveness of indoor air filters using air quality testing equipment. So I was really interested in that topic because I have asthma, and that made me want to understand ways that we can mitigate the severity of asthma, which led me to my master's degree at University of North Texas. I switched gears to understanding how we can improve outdoor air quality through the use of trees. So particularly in urban areas. In the top picture, you can see me at my thesis defense with my dad. Hi, Dad. I think he's on this call right now. I studied how urban trees remove soot from the atmosphere. And then I also taught environmental chemistry at Texas Women's University. Now I'm in the urban program at Boston University and a tree and air quality researcher. I'm also a member of a team working to understand air pollution mitigation through urban forestry at the Arnold Arboretum. So if you go to the next slide, there are three main questions that we will be addressing today. The first is, how do we make environmental education visible? The second is, how do we make research visible? And the third is, how do we make public outreach and tree ecosystem services visible? So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Ana Maria, and she will start to answer the first question for you.
Thank you. So how do we make environmental education visible? The question that I think about is, what is invisible to students and their teachers? So what is it that is invisible that we have to make visible? And a couple of things come to mind. The first one is the concept you've all heard of called plant blindness, which is really true. Plants are the manifestation of the invisible, air and water, made visible. But even so, there's such lack of awareness and recognition about plants. Another idea that I think is invisible in the work that we do is big science concepts: photosynthesis, respiration, interdependence, patterns, evolution. All these words really are very abstract, and they are usually learned in isolations, just as mere vocabulary words. And that makes it really hard for students to understand what's going on. Equally invisible, I believe, are some science practices. Children have to observe, analyze, argue, model skills. And these are skills that we want students to have in order to be scientifically literate and productive citizens. And yet most students have very little exposure to these practices. And then the last part of invisibility, I think, is the actual research and the avenues of learning that are in academia and in research facilities, such as the ones at the Arboretum, are largely unknown by most people. They're invisible to the greater audience. So sometimes I think of my job as a translator, taking the research and the discoveries and the knowledge that's made in the institutions, and then figuring out ways to help explain it and make it more visible and make it available to both teachers and the students through the work that we do together. So next. So I do my work in three primary avenues. First and foremost, I work directly with children and their teachers during field trips that they take when they come to the Arboretum. I support self-guided trips and all permutations of on-site learning. The strength of our work is the hands-on component and the small guide to children ratio. We usually average 1 guide to 6 children. And I think that this model is the model that allows children to use their senses to explore the natural concepts, and an interested adult that guides their conversations and science practices. We aim to help children, we aim to put children into a sense-making capacity and making sense of natural phenomena. Next. My work also involves in-service and pre-service teachers, administrators, specialists, and other educators. And that's another way to make this work more visible. We try very hard to serve Boston Public School educators as our core audience, mainly through the yearly Summer Institute, which I run, and also a monthly Arboretum for educators. And you can find out more about those 2 programs on our website. Next. Finally, there's the greater outreach opportunities with the work that I do through writing, my presence at conferences, sometimes presenting and attending, collaborating with organizations such as Speak for the Trees, and through our website, we can further promote nature-based education and outdoor learning experiences. An example of how I do this, especially now in the age of COVID, is through our Everyday Nature Tasks calendar. And if you go to our website or you Google Everyday Nature Tasks, you'll come across this particular calendar, which every day of the week, there is a task. And it's a very specific task. It's a daily nature task. It sets the stage and tells the child to go and do something related with nature. And whenever appropriate, I'll provide a link to a book or more resources or a worksheet that they can download and then use when they're doing observations. So this has been a really fun project that is meant to have families and children do together as a way to promote much more outdoor learning and thereby just become more engaged and become more attuned to the natural world around them. So when I plan for all these programs, I often will meet with Faye, pick her brain and meet with her so we can discuss some possibilities for how I can get some of this work done. So I'm going to move it over to Faye because she'd be the person that I would talk to.
All right. And one of the biggest things is that the Arboretum has been around for almost 150 years. In a couple years, that will be our birthday. And there has been research and science happening at the Arboretum for this entire time. But I would say, for the most part, most people who are walking through the Arboretum don't actually know that there's any research that's happening here, that there's science that's happening here, that there's education through Ana Maria that's happening here. And that's something that we try and work really hard in order to share our work and everyone else's work like that comes from other places with the greater group of people there. My thing just said that my speaker wasn't working. Can you guys hear me?
It's
Yeah,
a
it's
little
breaking up.
choppy.
Yeah, it's
Very muffled.
Is this better?
That is better.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Probably just a little far away. All right. So, well, what I was saying is that, you know, research has been happening here this entire time, but a lot of people don't know it. And so one of the most visible ways that we can make our invisible science visible is actually through this building itself. So before this building was built in 2011 is when we moved in. All of our scientists were actually kind of nestled away, hiding in somebody else's lab on the Cambridge campus. So we had scientists here, but they weren't on site. So they couldn't be a part very easily of,
Say you're breaking up again.
okay, let me just try one thing.
Just want to say I appreciate how resilient and creative our speakers are between the PowerPoint snafu and the speakers. Very impressive. Real educators.
Can you hear me now?
We can, yeah.
Yeah, clear.
Tell me again if it goes bad.
Okay, that's nice and clear now.
Good. So I'm not sure what you heard, so I'll probably start again. This is our building that opened in 2011. And before, when I was first hired, this building was completely empty. There wasn't a single lick of furniture in it. And all of our scientists were actually in somebody else's lab, kind of in a little hidden corner in Cambridge. So it was really difficult for them to be a part of the Arboretum's public programs. Now with this building, there's a lot more that they can do. So if you switch to the next slide. So in this building, we actually have research labs, we have grow facilities, and we also have a teaching lab. So there you can see I'm teaching that history class I mentioned earlier, how to look at the cores under microscopes. And if you go to the next slide. So this is just a snapshot of some of the people in the groups that are working at Weld Hill itself. And so we have 3 faculty labs. They're all faculty in the Department of Organismic and Evolutionary Biology. So they're working on the process of making new species, on development and flowering and things of that sort. And we also have 2 Putnam Fellows who are independent postdocs that are working on a project all on their own. They're in charge of their budget, they're in charge of their students and everything else that goes with there. And then we also have summer internship programs. So we invite students from across the country and sometimes as far away as Colombia, the country, where Ana Maria was from for a couple years. And we also have our awardees that we support and we fund when they come and do research at the Arboretum. And that includes Jenna, who you can see in that picture right there, looking at some deposition into the environment. And if you go to the next slide, please. And so you might ask this question, how many scientists are there actually at the Arboretum? And just in Weld Hill alone, there's 94 individual scientists that are working in those labs. But we also have active work that's going outside in the collections themselves. And just in 2019, there was 92 projects. Those might be something with a single tree, looking at a flower and how it develops, or an entire family of trees. It might be looking at the insects that are pollinating those trees or eating those trees, or it might even be work that's happening in the soils around the trees. Or, as Jen is going to tell you later, what's happening in the actual air around it. And so for those scientists, we have all of these people who are coming here, they're doing their research and wanting to share that with people as well. So if you go to the next page, I think every scientist that is at the Arboretum actually loves the fact that it's so easy to share their research with the public as being part of the Arboretum. We can plug directly into the different public programs that we have. So in this one picture, you can see Robin Hopkins is teaching at Ana Maria Summer Institute. So she is there teaching the different teachers. We also have programs that we do with the Harvard Med School so that we can teach high schoolers that come in for the summer about how to do ecology experiments. Then we also have all kinds of other public programs like the tree mobs and the botany blasts, just giving tours. All of those things happen. And then we also have publications, our website, social media, which we all share on there. And then we have a seminar series that we do every week that's open to the public, that's actually geared for us. It's the people we want to hear. So we're bringing them in from across the country. But anyone could come to it, but it's also streamed live on YouTube. So you can come, you can watch it on YouTube if you can't get here, and you can see that. And it's also something that our Jenna will be invited soon to give a talk here, but our interns also give a talk about their research that they did for the summer. And again, their mother can watch from whichever. This particular intern was from Florida, so her family was watching while she was giving it at the same time. So that's, I think, one of the best things about being a scientist at the Arboretum is that it's so easy to share in any way that you want to. So that's what I have to say. So now Jenna is going to give her part.
Okay, thanks, Faye. So because my main research focus is on urban areas, I'll be focusing my portion of the talk on urban pollution mitigation. So we know that trees remove pollution from the air, and researchers can actually quantify these amounts and benefits. It has been estimated that across the US, urban forests specifically, so not including rural forests, just urban forests, remove about 711,000 tons of pollution from the air, and that is specifically in terms of criteria air pollutants. So criteria air pollutants include emissions from cars, mostly like particulate matter and nitrous oxides. So to the right, you can see a picture of our study site at the Arboretum, which is considered an urban forest. Our site specifically is located right next to a roadway, which means that all of the trees along that roadway are exposed to a lot of pollutants. The annual savings due to urban forest pollution removal is estimated at $3.8 billion. Cities across the US see an improvement of 16% in their air quality when leaves are on trees. So this might not seem like a lot to some people, but it is statistically significant, especially when we're taking into account all of the other benefits that trees provide, like shading and stormwater mitigation. So in Boston, Speak for the Trees is doing an excellent job at encouraging urban forest development by holding tree giveaways and targeting low canopy areas specifically, which tend to be environmental justice neighborhoods. So I think that they are doing excellent work there. And you can go to the next slide. In terms of my personal research, I investigate the mechanisms of pollution removal by urban trees, as well as the quantities of pollution removal. So some species have different mechanisms that either make them good or bad at capturing pollution from the atmosphere, some worse than others. And my research focuses mainly on the pollutant known as particulate matter. So if you look to the bottom right, you can see myself and my master's advisor. We are using a scanning electron microscope to obtain photos like the one above that, which is a zoomed in picture and shows a leaf and all of the particles that are deposited onto it. So all of those circular particles are particulate matter. Those particles, like I said, come from human sources, especially car emissions. Those particles can harm leaves, and I investigate that resulting damage. So I plan to apply this work to trees at the Arboretum using funding from the Deland Award. And therefore, in that case, I make invisible particles and their damage visible on leaves. You can go to the next slide. So my work also involves quantifying particulate matter and teaching students. So one of my main teaching goals has been to help students understand that they can learn about pollution and understand pollution in the air using low-cost particle sensors. So to the right, you can see some of my students at Texas Women's University learning to use a particle counter, which was part of how I provided them with the tools necessary to pursue environmental-based jobs, which was not something that they had previously understood. Teaching students that they don't need to be part of a fancy, expensive research lab or anything like that in order to quantify air pollution or understand environmental effects is one way I include the importance of social justice in my work and environmental justice. You can go to the next. So finally, I also conduct a lot of public outreach about my research. I believe it is extremely important to share findings with the communities that could be impacted by my research. So I have presented at community meetings to teach constituents about the importance of conserving their trees. I also have scaled that up to larger levels when I present to nonprofit organizations like a chapter of Keep America Beautiful and city council meetings. I have also presented my research to associations like the Professional Grounds Management Society and the Master Naturalist Society to help them in their decision-making processes. And I hope to soon also present my work at the Arboretum for those who want to learn more about air pollution mitigation through urban forestry. So you can go to the next. This slide just includes our contact information, and I believe we are also going to put that in the chat. And we are happy to take any questions you have at this time.
Thanks to our speakers. That was a delightful presentation with really fantastic images. And so if you're on video, you can clap and we can see you do that, and that's nice. And so this is a good time for questions from the audience. If you want to type them in the chat, I'll either ask them on your behalf, synthesize them together, or if you'd like to ask yourself, just indicate that in the chat, and then I'll call on you to keep some order.
And if it's okay to our presenters, I'm going to try to upload that presentation now to the chat window. We'll see if that works.
Yeah, that sounds great. And if you're able to put the links to our contact information too.
Yeah, the problem with links is they're not active, but we can cut and paste them. You just have to cut and paste them back.
I can also just put mine in the chat.
I'll do it.
So
well, and Ana Maria and I have easy ones because you just need to go to the Arboretum website and find us under people.
So I'll start with the first question while we're waiting for some more to come in on the chat. And that is, you know, personally, I'm so surprised to hear about all the things that are happening at the Arboretum. My experience there is mostly walking around and looking at the trees and enjoying the space. And I don't normally see groups of children learning from educators or see researchers collecting information. I'm curious for each of you, what are some of the surprises that you've encountered either working at the Arboretum or working with the Arboretum, as far as some of the other invisible things happening there, either as part of the programming or that are, you know, creative and emergent from the public? What surprises have you encountered? I guess I can, yeah, who wants to start by answering that question?
I'll start. I think one of the things that surprised me the most, and I'm there all the time, and I know that research is happening at the Arboretum, but it always surprises me when I actually see a body collecting samples from the Arboretum. And even if it's someone who's tangentially connected, I was out with a group of students. We were actually talking about pollinators and pollinator interactions with flowers and learning about parts of the flowers. And this young man just walked by with this huge net, and I stopped and asked him, oh, you know, what are you doing? And he's like, well, you know, I do research with butterflies at a lab, I think at MIT perhaps. but I have permission from the Arboretum to come to the Arboretum to collect a particular plant, which is the only plant these butterflies will feed on, or the caterpillar, the larva will feed on. And it's not monarchs, it was something completely different. And so it just astonishes me that, and on any given day, there's always someone who's using our collections for research. And I think that I know a lot, and I'm still surprised every day when I see someone doing that.
Yeah, Faye, Jenna, surprises from you?
Well, I think it's just, like Ana Maria said, we work there, but we have no idea how much is happening all of the time. We have staff meetings every other month where someone will give a little presentation and we'll be like, oh, I didn't know they were doing that. And I think the thing that was most exciting was how everybody really embraced this remote only world we're living in right now, and really is working extra hard to make sure that there are things for the public, that there's everyday nature tests, that there's videos, that we're still helping the students to be able to do research when, you know, this was a big change for everybody. So I think that everyone is so wonderful there that it just is really great because people are always trying to help everyone else.
I'm going to ask a question, kind of combining two from the chat, which is about disturbance and impact on the Arboretum. So part one is, in what ways does research disturb the Arboretum in terms of, you know, maybe potential impacts on plants or trees when you're collecting material? And also, do people ever disturb the research? You know, members of the public knocking over samples or disrupting it. So yeah, responses to either of those.
So if you're doing work outside in the collections, you actually have to write a proposal that goes through our curation department. Then they work with our horticulture department and our public programs department, and everybody is all tied there, so that you can't suggest that you're going to do a project where you're going to cut down an entire tree. It's not going to happen. But you know, if you need to do some coring of the tree, we can see what it is. If it's one that's like an ill tree that's not doing so well, they might say no, but you can use this other tree instead. All of that is carefully thought of and done. And I think most of what the work is that's being done is actually helping those trees in some way or another, even tangentially, if it's about evolution and understanding that. So there's not really much disruption of the things that are there. We did have someone who wanted to do some work on roots. Well, we just air spaded a little roots around, and that's a way that you can get to it. So we actually have tools that makes research happen without hurting the trees. And it's not like you can go out to a forest and get some roots very easily. So that's something that's able to be happening. And a lot of this work tells us things that we wouldn't know, like I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but as far as fireflies, we have like the biggest diversity of fireflies in all of Boston from some work that was done at Tufts University. And I cannot give you the numbers because I don't remember them, but we do have the biggest diversity there. So we find things out that we didn't know in the past. And yes, work is disrupted by people sometimes. And I'm sure Jenna can probably talk about that because she has collectors outside where people walk by them all the time. But most people are very respectful of the things that we have, and we don't have as big a problem as you might have if you were trying to put that precipitation collector in the middle of the city in an abandoned lot, for example.
Right.
So that makes it a lot easier.
That's what a great response. So Jenna, we have a few questions for you about your research, and maybe you can also respond to what they mentioned about disruption. There's a good question from Richard that Richard Smith, if you're open to asking it yourself, you can unmute and ask about that you posted earlier in the chat.
Sure. Yeah, I was just curious. I think she mentioned something about differences in trees in terms of their processing of the pollution.
And before you answer that, Jenna, Raquel had a question that also aligned with that. Do you want to ask yours too? And then Jenna, you can ask them both at the same time.
Sure. First of all, great presentation, everyone. This was fantastic. I guess my question is like really specific. Jenna, are you aware if there is like a particle removal factor by tree unit or tree canopy area, something that can inform like what's the capacity for a single tree like to remove air pollution? Like how much can a single tree remove? Thank
So
you.
that's your question. How much can a single tree, and are there differences between species?
Okay, so I'm going to answer Raquel's first. Hi, Raquel. There is not a pollution removal factor. No. Every species is going to remove at different rates, in different quantities, and it also depends on where it's placed. So if a tree is placed near a high emitting source, like next to a road, it's going to remove more pollution from the atmosphere than if it is placed in the middle of a forest or somewhere far away from emissions. So no, there isn't an actual factor, but I would love for there to be one. That would make my job a lot easier. Richard, yes, so different species, I study specifically particles, so I am not versed on pollution removal of different or other types of gases or things like that. But in terms of particles, different species will remove at different rates. For example, coniferous species with needles tend to have a thick epicuticular wax on their needles. So trees with thicker waxes on them tend to be able to capture more particles than leaves that have thinner waxes. Another example is the density of trichomes on leaves. So trichomes are usually used as a defense mechanism on leaves to keep particles away, but instead what they actually tend to do is capture particles within them. So they kind of just look like hair-like features on the tops and bottoms of different leaves, depending on the species. So we see that leaves in general with more trichomes on them tend to collect more particles in them. So it really depends. It's very species dependent. Usually what I've learned is that it's more leaf dependent than canopy level dependent. So yes, so if you have a bigger tree in general, it will capture more particles, but the layout and physiology of the canopy tends to matter less than the actual physiology of the leaf itself.
Evan, can I jump in? Sort of a different take to the question about disturbance and how much disturbance is there for research. I can speak from the educational point of view. We're not doing research in the landscape. We're trying to learn from the landscape. And there's an awful lot of disturbance that happens by the casual visitor, particularly in a plot that we have on Hemlock Hill, where we're trying to maintain an ecosystem that is terrific for decomposers and producers and consumers. So there's a lot of downed logs, and oftentimes visitors will come and they will strip the bark out of all those downed logs. And that's the worst thing you could do, because you're basically eliminating the habitat for all these decomposers that live in the log. So a lot of what I do and try to do is sort of the education of the public and educating the students and the teachers about why it's so important to let that bark decompose naturally. And so in a way, people are much more respectful of the obvious research that might be happening in the landscape because they see a meter or they might see a tag, but then they see these trees or these logs and they don't understand that they're also destroying research, i.e. the educational piece of what we're trying to do with the Arboretum with children. So that's sort of another way to look at disturbance in the landscape.
Thank you. And I think I'd like to ask one more question that maybe each of you can answer. And this one is from Larry, about how the mission of the Arnold Arboretum has changed over time, especially considering more emergent threats like climate change. And I'm including you, Jenna, answering this too, because our research priorities about trees and how we understand them has also changed over time. So I'd like to hear about how the Arnold Arboretum's mission has changed as it relates to your work and to your research. Ana Maria, do you want to start?
A couple of summers ago, for 2 summers now, my last 2 summer institutes have been specifically dedicated to working with middle school and high school teachers around issues of climate change, except that I'm not necessarily addressing climate change as a topic. What I want to do is promote the use of fieldwork and fieldwork techniques so that students can go outside and practice doing some field work and gather some data and collect information that will help inform their understanding of climate change. So if they can truly understand, take DBH measures of a tree to see how much carbon is being stored in those trees, and they understand concretely what that really means, then the more theoretical understanding of what's happening with carbon in the air and the climate changing is going to make more sense for them. So it's definitely been foremost in the minds of a lot of educators, particularly in that middle and high school where they're doing much more abstract thinking.
Thank you. And Faye?
So I think the mission of the Arboretum has always been research, education, and horticulture. And the specific research that's been done might change over time, but research has always been the core part of a mission, as well as education and as well as horticulture. Those are the three big things that we do. And techniques may change, focuses may change, but that part hasn't changed in the almost 150 years that we've been there.
Very fair. And Jenna, do you want to tackle that too?
Well, I don't come directly from the Arboretum, so I can't speak directly to that, but I can say that the Arboretum's mission of promoting research is especially beneficial for students in my position who are just starting out, because the Arboretum provides a lot of opportunities to not only fund our research, but encourages that research. And we encourages research being done in a way that not only helps improve scientific knowledge, but also helps to expand the knowledge to the public. So that's one of my main goals, is making sure that my research is understood by not just quote unquote scientists, but by everyone. And I think that the Arboretum does a really excellent job of that.
Well, thank you all for answering those questions.
And if I may jump in for a sec, I think the other thing that the Arboretum does in our work at Speak for the Trees is it provides a learning lab for the youth we work with to have a different appreciation for trees, right? And see trees in a different light. So when we work with kids in urban forestry, there's very limited species, very limited types of landscape. And when they walk in after a couple of weeks of work in the urban forest, it's sort of like being in Disney World for them all, right? There's this amazing space where trees are bigger and they're different and they're sort of more free to do things. And I remember seeing I think it was a locust. It was called like a dagger locust or something. And so if you ever go to the Arboretum, the trees are divided into areas according to genus. So we're used to seeing the thornless honey locust on the streets of Boston, and then you walk into the locust section of the Arboretum, and there's a locusts naturally have thorns on them, and there's one that's literally you could grab the thorn off and it's a dagger. So it's just fascinating to have that as a resource in the city and have a different kind of experience with an urban forest.
Well, I have a few more questions because you are now about to participate in our quiz bowl. So thank you to our three volunteers who are speakers will be playing on behalf of. Today, Jenna will be playing on behalf of Carol. And after I announce each of you, I'll ask you to unmute and just tell us where you're calling in from, either where in Boston or where in the world. Faye will be playing on behalf of Suzanne, and Ana Maria will be playing on behalf of Jeffrey. Carol, can you tell us where you're calling from?
Yes, I'm from in my home in Brookline, just on the other side of Jamaica Pond, very close to the Arboretum.
Excellent. And Suzanne?
I'm in Rosendale at my house, not far from the Arboretum either.
And can I just interject? So Suzanne is the coordinator for Tree Spotters, which is a program at the Arboretum. And I saw in one of the questions on the side, someone wanted to know about what kind of research you can do where you can't collect anything. And they should talk to Suzanne later, because that's all about phenology and citizen science, and that's directly involved in climate change research. So that's a little connection that should be made there. So go on.
Yeah, and Suzanne, if you could just drop a link in the chat, then people can follow up. All right, and Jeffrey, where are you calling from?
Calling from a suburb west of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I work for the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum, which is part of the University of Minnesota here.
Brilliant.
I'm from Minnesota, so.
All right.
All right, so how this is going to work. The topic for today's Quiz Bowl is arboretums. Surprising, maybe no one. And so I have 2 questions for each of our 3 speakers, multiple choice. If you get the question right, you move on to the next round. If you don't, you're out. So it's single elimination. If there's a tie, I have a tiebreaker question, and then our winner, the guest who is being played on behalf of will get the t-shirt. So I am also going to make this a little bit more fun by putting on some Jeopardy music, which hopefully will work. And then I will ask the first question. Okay. Can you hear that? Can I get a thumbs up? Oh, that's so cool. All right, Jenna, we've been talking about arboretums, but what about a fruitacetum? A fruitacetum describes a collection of what? A, fruit trees, B, shrubs, or C, grains?
Fruit would be a shrub, B.
Very impressive. That's right. Congratulations, Jenna. All right, yes, frutex is Latin for like shrubs or bushes. So fruitacetum is a collection of shrubs or bushes. Okay, Ana Maria. The largest traveling Lego exhibit that visits arboretums nationwide includes giant butterflies, bonsai trees, and gardeners. About how many Lego bricks does this exhibition use? A, 10,000, B, 500,000, or C, 2 million?
I'm gonna go with 2 million.
Ooh, a little high. The answer was 500,000.
Sorry, Jeffrey.
Which is still a lot of bricks. A really cool exhibit called Nature Connects that I'll drop a link in the chat. All right, Faye. One of the earliest recorded arboretums was started by the Egyptian pharaoh Hatshepsut, who brought back 31 live trees from the Horn of Africa to Egypt. What commercially important tree did she bring back? A, olive, B, fig, or C, frankincense?
I'm gonna say olive.
Olive, ooh. I'm
Is it
sorry.
fig?
It is frankincense. Ana Marie, did you know that? Is that?
Yes, did I redeem myself?
Unfortunately not. All right, well, I think that means Jenna is our winner, which means that Carol will be winning the Speak for the Trees t-shirt. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Carol. Wear with pride. We'll be in touch. I'll drop my email here, and if you could reach out with your address and your preferred size. We run from extra small to double extra large. We'll send you your shirt. Thank you all for joining. I have 2 favors to ask. I'm gonna post a poll right now. If you could take a minute as you make your way out back to your real world to answer those 5 quick questions. Gives us a sense of what you thought of it, our session today. And always, if you have ideas of future topics for future sessions, don't hesitate to reach out to either Evan or myself. We are happy to think through future sessions. I think we have our next one lined up for next week. We hope to see you then. And I want to make one last shout out. We're working with a couple of restaurants right now to distribute these little seedlings. We're calling it Trees for Takeout. And as part of your takeout order from either Branch Line in Watertown or Shy Bird in Cambridge, you can add a little seedling to your order. Support the restaurant and support our work. We have white oaks. We have honey locust, the thornless variety, although I did see one with a thorn in it that snuck in there. And then I believe these are Norway spruces. Each individually bagged, safe for you to handle at home. And then tomorrow, I think we're going to be starting to distribute them with the Emerald Necklace Conservancy. So hopefully if you're walking through there, you'll see those and you can grab one and plant it in your yard.
And I have one announcement from BU Urban, and then if there's our announcements from our speakers, we'll do that too. BU Urban, we have our annual spring symposium coming up on May 19th. I just dropped the Eventbrite in the chat. It'll be a great chance to hear from Jenna and other PhD students at BU about the great work that they're doing. So we're excited about that event. And Ana Maria, Faye, Jenna, other announcements that you want to share before David and I wrap it up?
No, I put the Everyday Nature Task link in the chat pane before, so that's something that I encourage you to spread it far and wide and have all kinds of people out in nature every day.
Great. David, final announcements from you before we thank everyone?
No, I just wanted to say April showers bring May flowers. So here's to a very flowery May.
Nice
Thank you.
sentiment.
Thank you, our amazing speakers. Thank you, all of you. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for coming,
Thank you, guys.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, David. Thank you, Evan. It was a pleasure working with both of you.
Yes, thank you. And hold on, I'm trying to see, how do I stop the recording?
Oh,
Oh, here we go.
David, did you get the size? It was a size